Good evening, everybody. My name is Darrin Kerr from FK Partners, and tonight we're going to talk a little bit about the CFA program. In addition to that, we're going to do a little mini CFA class during the second half of the presentation tonight. And also, I think a lot of you all have signed up to join us tonight because we have the BOLSA program, our scholarship program, where we're going to do a little test, an online quiz tomorrow night, where you can participate, and the best students, the ones that are able to achieve the highest scores, are going to receive scholarships or BOLSAs to be able to participate in our CFA Level 1 prep course coming up later in 2019. So to get started tonight, everyone, I want to talk, like I said, a little bit about the CFA program. And as a way of doing that, I want to discuss really briefly a little bit about the history of FK Partners. We began our company in 2004 with a prep course for the CFA Level 1 exam. Since then, we've been able to expand into a lot of other different certification preparation courses, as well as doing other preparation for those that want to learn about interesting finance topics like financial modeling, valuation, corporate finance, mergers and acquisitions, investor relations, project finance, etc. We also have a division in our company in which we help students, Brazilians, that want to go and study abroad. Those that might pursue someday an MBA or a master's program outside of Brazil are able to do so with the help of FK by preparing for the GMAT, the GRE, the TOEFL, etc., some other admissions exams, as well as the preparation or help with the admissions process. So that being said, I just wanted to give a brief overview here of our company. We want to get into a little discussion here tonight about the CFA program, and then of course do a little class so that you have a feel for what the actual content of the program is all about and how we teach students to prepare for the test. We have a CFA exam upcoming this Saturday. The CFA Level 1 students for the December test will be taking their Level 1 exams. So we are finishing up our semester here in 2018, preparing those students. And we actually have already started preparing some of our students for the June 2019 exams. We'll have courses that'll also begin late in January and early in February of 2019 to continue to prepare for these upcoming exams later next year. So by way of discussion about the CFA program, I want to talk a little bit about the types of professionals that'll pursue the CFA charter. You have a lot of times when you're starting out, people that are just beginning their careers or even are in the final year of university preparing for that Level 1 test. After that, once you actually get into your work, you have a lot of people that work in either the sell side or the buy side. So you have a lot of research analysts and buy side analysts or portfolio managers that'll pursue the CFA charter. In fact, those are the top two professions around the world of CFA charter holders. We also have investment bankers and private equity professionals, as well as those that work in companies in corporate finance areas, risk areas, and then a lot of those that work in consulting focused on corporate finance and mergers and acquisition and other types of advisory work. You even have the C-level executives, primarily CFOs, and even some CEOs that'll pursue and ultimately obtain the CFA charter. But it's a lot of work, and that's one of the things that we want to discuss here tonight. How do you actually get from the starting point here of preparing yourself for that first exam all the way up through the end where you're able to pass Level 3 and become a CFA charter holder? So we want to talk a little bit about the sequence of these tests so that the exam becomes a little bit more familiar for you all if and when you decide to pursue the CFA charter. So I think a lot of you already know that the CFA exam is divided across 3 levels. You're going to need to pass 3 different exams to be able to obtain the charter along the way. So we have the Level 1 exam, which we call the base knowledge exam. And you're going to go through lots of different topics here in Level 1. That would include the ethics material, but quant, economics, financial reporting and analysis, corporate finance, and then the asset class materials such as equity, fixed income, derivatives, even alternative investments. And then you have some portfolio management content as well. When you get into level 2, you're going to cover all of these same topics, but you're going to go into much more detail as you learn to actually analyze and apply a lot of the concepts that are introduced to you all in the level 1 curriculum. And then by the time that you reach the level 3 curriculum, the exam really veers off into a portfolio manager exam. So what I like to think of as the sequence here, you have the level 1 knowledge or base exam. You have the level 2 where you really dive deep into the analysis, so your true financial analyst exam. And then level 3, you're going to pull it all together, synthesize the material that was taught to you all in the levels 1 and 2 exams so that you're ready to become, with a skill set to do portfolio management. So you have a nice sequence that basically builds upon the prior level so that you're ready by the time you get through the level 3 to really have a good sense of what the different types of professions are and how you would apply a lot of the tools and techniques learned in the CFA curriculum to those varied professions in the financial service industry. So just by way of discussing a little bit about the topic weightings, we have here in terms of topic weightings for level 1, you can see you have up at the very top the ethics material comprising 15% of this test. The CFA Institute is always very, very conscious about making sure those that work in the financial profession are going to be of a high ethical standard. And they really emphasize this material, not just in level 1, but as you can see across all 3 levels. Then you have quant and economics, financial reporting, the corporate finance, and then like we talked about, the asset classes, equity and fixed income are the big ones, and then a little bit smaller weightings on derivatives and alternative investments. You have a little bit of a weight also. You can see at the bottom in our table for portfolio management here in level 1. Now, when you shift over into level 2, you can see the weightings start to become ranges. So it's not a fixed weighting like you would encounter in level 1, but instead a range in terms of what you can expect more or less in terms of number of questions on the level 2 exam. So the range you can see there for ethics, somewhere between 10 to 15%, and those ranges vary somewhere as low as 5% up to, you can see, as high as 15% across all the varied topics. When you get into level 3, though, you can see, although they maintain those different ranges, there are some significant changes in terms of what's actually being tested. You can see, obviously, we still have the ethics, but we drop off quant, financial reporting, and corporate finance, as those topics are heavily tested earlier on in the first 2 levels. You have still some economics, but then you have a big focus on asset classes across, you can see equity and fixed income, a little bit on alternatives and derivatives, but then a big, big chunk of the exam for level 3 is going to be focused on portfolio management. In fact, in level 3, even all the other topics, equity, fixed income, derivatives, are all aligned with those skills that a portfolio manager would need in terms of applying the material across those different asset classes. So very, very heavy curriculum in terms of the preparation. Now, I want to talk briefly about the level 1 exam in a little bit more detail, because when you actually start, you gotta, in order to be able to advance, get through that level 1 test. Now, all of the tests are 6 hours. All of the tests are divided across a morning session, that's 3 hours, that starts at 9 o'clock in the morning and goes until 12 o'clock. And then after a 2-hour lunch break, you have an afternoon session from 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock. They all follow that 6-hour format that's basically taking up your entire day. Now, specifically in the morning exam, the level 1 exam, you're going to have all multiple choice questions, a total of 240 questions, 120 in the morning, 120 questions in the afternoon. So you have 3 hours or 180 minutes to do these questions, and thus it's going to take you approximately a minute and a half to do each question. Now, all of the questions are standalone. That's an important distinction because when you're going through a test with 240 total questions, you can know that the question that you just did is not linked to the next one. So if you didn't understand a topic and were unsure and you're probably going to get it incorrect, know that the next question that follows has nothing to do with the question that you just performed. Okay, now the other thing that is noted here in the setup or format for the level 1 exam is that the topics, questions are all organized by categories. So we saw the category topics a moment ago: ethics, quant, economics, financial reporting, and on and on. So you have all of these topics and all the questions organized accordingly. All of the topics are going to be covered in equal weightings across morning and afternoon. So for example, we saw that quant was 10%. That means that out of 240 total questions, you're going to have 24 quant questions. 12 of them will be in the morning, 12 more in the afternoon. Economics, again, 10%. 12 in the morning, 12 in the afternoon, 24 total questions. So we know exactly how many questions we're getting, not just in total, but across each of the different 3-hour sessions that you'll have to deal with on exam day. Now that's different in terms of levels 2 and 3. Levels 2 and 3, the topic questions actually are integrated. They're not standalone. And you could even have questions that go across different categories, especially when you get into the level 3 exam where they test across all of the different categories and study sessions. But for level 1, as you get started into the program, the exam is very straightforward in terms of how it is formatted. Now, another very important distinction here for you all to prepare yourselves if you decide to take the leap and do the CFA program is to understand a little bit about the amount of time it's actually going to take a student to prepare. So I want to show you all a candidate preparation feedback, and this is directly from the CFA Institute. If you were to go around on their website and search a little bit for feedback from candidates, you're going to see that the average amount of time preparing for one of the CFA exams is approximately 320 hours of study time. 300 hours approximately for level 1, and then a little bit more for both levels 2 and 3. That's 300 hours per level. And a lot of times candidates, spend, more time than they expected to spend preparing for this test. Very, very, very few students give feedback that says that they spent less time than they had expected to prepare for this exam. But the exam is very fair. It's a fair test. You can see here in this other feedback survey that the candidates that responded said that 92% of the questions were aligned with the learning outcome statements that the CFA Institute provides in the curriculum. 91% said it was a fair representation of the assigned readings, of the assigned curriculum that they were required to study in preparation for the exam. 90% said it was topics relevant to the profession. So people are looking at this feedback. This is not an easy test, as we're going to see in the difficulty of the exam questions, but they're saying it's a fair test. It was a fair test. They told you what to study, and those were the types of questions that appeared on the exam. Now, in terms of level of difficulty, you have a lot of students, you can see there, claiming that it was as difficult or even more difficult than they expected. Very, very few say that the exam was less difficult than they thought it would be. But in terms of clarity of questions, you have students responding almost unanimously that the questions either were clearly or even very clearly written, and thus you can again feel that if you do all the hard work and prepare yourself for this exam, that it is in fact a fair test. Now, that being said, getting through level 1 is hard work. It shows that you're committed, it shows that you can study, that you have good time management skills. You're building, remember, that base knowledge that you're going to be able to use later on as you go through and work your way through levels 2 and 3. But in order to make it all the way through, you also have to realize that the upper level exams, levels 2 and 3, are going to be more difficult than what you encountered in level 1. We saw the time spent preparing for both levels 2 and 3 is more than students prepare themselves for the level 1 exam. The other thing that's worth noting is the students that are actually taking levels 2 and 3, they're already pretty good students because they actually made it through level 1. Level 1 really actually serves as a filter to determine who's actually really serious about this program and who's not as serious or is not able to dedicate the time. So it's important, we're going to talk about the sequence a little bit later, but it's important for you all to understand if you decide to make that leap and move into preparing for the CFA, that you know what you're getting into. Now let's talk a little bit big picture about actually getting all the way to the end and obtaining the CFA charter. In order to do that, of course, you're going to have to pass each of the 3 exams in sequence. In addition, you're going to need to show 4 years of qualified work experience. This is something, again, that you don't need to do at the start. It's something that you're going to need to prove at the finish, at the end. In addition to the passing of the exams and the required work experience, you're going to need to also have a couple of letters of recommendation and fill out what's called a professional conduct statement to show that you, as a professional, have not violated any of the ethical standards. The final thing, unfortunately, that a candidate must do to become an actual charter holder, besides passing the test, is starting to pay annual dues to the CFA Institute. But you do receive benefits. There are a lot of different networking opportunities that arise through your association with the CFA program, and it's something that you're going to have throughout your career. One of the things that's very beneficial, obviously, to pursuing this and moving your way through the levels is that it can open doors for you to new career opportunities. Now, this might happen early on. Let's say you pass the level 1 exam and move into level 2, becoming a level 2 candidate. And somebody notices that on your LinkedIn profile, or it's known internally at work. You're up for a promotion and they give you the promotion over other candidates because you're the guy that's doing the CFA and passed the first level. Other things that can happen to you all as you work your way through the different exams here. You have, in terms of the career opportunities, you could see yourself maybe sometime later on in your career ultimately receiving an opportunity that's a little bit better than maybe what you would have received had you not pursued this program. So that's something that is, as a young person, can give you benefits for 20, 30, even 40 years into the future. So very, very beneficial to not just the knowledge base that you're going to be able to gather through your studies, but also through the career opportunities that the CFA program can present all the way through. Now, some other things that I'd like to talk to you about in terms of the program sequence, the different levels. You have here across the different levels, the level 1 being what we call the filter. So unfortunately, there's a lot of students that don't make it through level 1. Now, I truly believe that if you've worked really hard, put in the effort, you can pass level 1. But sometimes, because of a lack of time or lack of discipline, students are not able to make it through. So they get filtered out, we say, from the level 1. Now, once you do make it through level 1, you get into level 2. And you're going to notice as soon as you start studying that level 2 is much more difficult. Level 2 we call the get stuck test. Level 2 is the one that opens your eyes to realize that level 1 we thought was hard, level 2 is really hard. So sometimes even good students have a little bit of trouble passing the level 2 exam. But if they do, then we know that with effort, they're going to be able to make it all the way to the end and pass level 3. So we say focus and finish. If you can get through level 2, you can get through level 3. Now, the issue that can arise in level 3 is that you might determine, somewhere along the way that you're tired of studying, that it's been a long grind over the last couple of years, and maybe you don't put in as much of an effort in the final year. Not everybody's thinking that way. Of course, a lot of others think the opposite. Say, I want to put in even more effort now, so I'm completely done with this and don't have to think about a CFA test ever again. And that's the mindset that we want to teach our students. Focus and finish. If you can make it through level 2, you got an opportunity, you got a great opportunity really to make it all the way to the end. All right, now let me talk briefly here about what we do at FK Partners, specifically around the CFA prep. We've been doing this for a long time, since 2004. So about 15 years now, or will be starting next year. So combined across all of our teaching team, we have over 50 years of teaching experience. And since we've been in the market for so long here in Brazil, and Brazil's a relatively small market in terms of CFA candidates, we've trained or touched, say, over half of the CFA charter holders in Brazil. So it's really proud of that opportunity that we're able to help year in and year out more and more CFA charter holders actually make it all the way through and obtain their charter. Another thing that's very relevant to our CFA program, we have a great partnership with the leading material provider for the CFA curriculum, and that is Kaplan-Schweizer. Most candidates will prepare using Kaplan-Schweizer study material during their CFA careers. And we represent them here in Brazil and actually all across South America, and can provide discounted pricing on the CFA prep material that Kaplan-Schweizer provides. We use the material in our courses through PowerPoint presentations and question sets that in mock exams that we perform through the courses with our students, but also our students and non-students sometimes will purchase the study note materials from us, the Kaplan-Schweizer materials, that is, at discounted pricings that one would have to pay if they went directly to the US website. So these are just some things that I want to share with you all. And then the final comment that I wanted to make before we start our mini class is that here in the São Paulo office, we do presencial or live courses each semester. So our live level 1 course has over 100 hours of class time. We have lecture classes that go through all the content of the exam, and then we have what are called power sessions or exercise resolution classes towards the end of the program. We have 2 full mock exams as you get later into your semester, one right before the exercise resolution classes and one at the very end. In addition to the study notes and to the all the classes and the mock exams and all the rest, we also provide what we call coaching and support. We have a dedicated team here that will help our CFA students work their way through the study plan and ultimately get to test day and beyond as they approach level 1 exam and move their way into levels 2 and 3. So we have, beyond the classes, the professor team, and the partners here, we have a team of FK Partner employees focused on helping you, the candidate, the FK Partner student, prepare themselves for the level 1 exam and the other levels along the way. So these are just some of the things that I wanted to share with you all in this introductory part of our discussion tonight. And our next step is going to do a little mini class. Now, before we do that, I want to take a brief pause and see if anybody has any questions, either in the chat or if they want to ask a question on the microphone. If you do want to ask just via microphone, please feel free. I just ask you all to keep your microphone off when you're not asking a question. So let me just stop here briefly and see if there are any questions from our audience tonight. Questões, Giovanna?
Como que o curso é estruturado no Rio?
For our Rio students, we have a combination of live broadcast classes in the format that you're looking at and live classes at a location in Rio. So it's a mix of live broadcast and actual presencial classes in our Rio location.
Tem mais uma pessoa que quer tirar dúvida, que é o Felipe Carvalho.
So another question, everyone. Just a moment.
Depois de cada prova, você tem certificado de conclusão do nível. Ou apenas o certificado final?
So a question about, do you get a partial certification or a certification as you pass each level? And the answer to that is no. There is one certification, and it's when you pass level 3 and conclude the other requirements about work experience and professional recommendations. There is no partial certification that one would receive for passing either level 1 or level 2. That being said, you can make a factual statement on your CV that you passed the level 1 exam. So let's say that next year in 2019 you take the level 1 and you pass. You could write in your CV that you passed the level 1. You could, if you become a level 2 candidate, actually write that. So if you're a candidate for the next level, meaning if you have signed up to take the next level, you can actually state that you're a candidate for that level. There is no official partial designation, and there is no paper that would prove such, but you can make a factual statement as to where you are in the program. Those that are in the know, in the marketplace here, that understand what the CFA program is all about, will know that if you did pass level 1, that's an accomplishment. Even though you don't get a certification for it, it is an accomplishment, something that not a lot of people do. So just be aware that you can state where you are factually as you work your way through. Okay?
Outra pergunta.
Okay.
Quanto tempo eu tenho que esperar entre os níveis? How long can I wait between levels?
So in terms of how long you can take to go through the entire program, there is no time limit to pass the levels. You could take 10 years or more to get all the way through if you wanted to, but that, of course, would not be recommended. We would encourage you all, if you're going to do this, to try to do it in 3 years. Level 1, and then level 2, and then level 3. That being said, if you didn't pass a level and you needed to retake that level and then retake it again, you can go on and on doing this for as many years as you want. If you had to take a break, let's say you passed level 1 next year, but work got in the way, or you went abroad to study for a master's program and you came back 2 years later, whatever the case may be, you can pause and return. Not a big deal. There is no time limit to moving from the beginning to the end of the program. Okay, we're just searching the chat, everyone, for some other questions that came in during the initial part of our discussion tonight.
Uma pergunta do Felipe. Ele queria saber se eu não tenho a certificação, mas tem algum tipo de comprovação, tipo diploma. Sai uma lista? Como que é a certificação?
There is no certification nor list that the CFA Institute publishes for just passing level 1 or level 2. There is a certification, of course, at the end, and there is a list that you can access, an actual public directory. In fact, you could access the CFA charter holders in Brazil or anywhere, really, if you go to their website and search. But there's just no way to search to see who are the candidates in the program, even if they've passed a level or 2 levels. So there is no partial designation, there is no diploma or anything of the sort for just simply passing levels 1 or 2. You have to go all the way to the end to be publicly recognized with that certification by the CFA Institute.
Tem 2 perguntas que é em relação à prova, que eu acho que você pode responder para os 2.
Okay.
A prova é feita apenas fora do Brasil e quanto custa para fazer o teste aqui no Brasil?
Okay, so good questions about the exam. The exam is conducted in over 100 countries throughout the world on the same day, on the same weekend, I should better say. There are some religious holidays that where students don't take the exam on Saturdays and thus instead will take it on a Sunday. So all over the world on the same weekend, you have CFA candidates taking CFA exams. You have a test date in June for levels 1, 2, and 3, and then you have a test date in December just for level 1. So there are 2 opportunities throughout the year to take level 1, 1 opportunity throughout the year to take levels 2 or 3. All over the world. This exam started in 1963 in the United States. Then it spread through some other countries, first through the region of Europe, then on to some other regions. Here in Brazil, you have 2 test centers. You can take the exam here in São Paulo, where we are located, or you can take it in Rio. In South America, all of the major countries, capitals, also have test locations. When you sign up, you can choose where you want to take the exam. If you live here in Brazil, you'd probably choose São Paulo or Rio. If you live in Brazil, but you know you're going to be on vacation or traveling during the test date, you can choose a different location. Test cost. What does it cost? There's an initial fee to actually join the program. And then there's a fee to take a test. The cost will vary, everybody, depending on when you sign up. There's an early sign-up date that has since passed for the June test. We're currently in the regular sign-up date that goes on until February 13th of 2019. If you sign up before then, you get the regular test pricing. And then there's a late registration over the final month from mid-February until mid-March. Cost to enter the program is approximately, depending on when you sign up, it's approximately $450. And then it's going to cost you another approximately $930, I believe, $950. Approximately that's to take a test. So your initial cost is going to be a little bit more. You're going to spend about $1,400 to join and take level 1. If you pass, you're going to move on to level 2, and you're only going to pay for a test. If you don't pass, you'll have to retake level 1, but you, again, just pay for the test. So there's the one-time fee to register, approximately $450, and then there's the test fees that are a little over $900 each time. So it comes out around a little under $1,000, about $1,400 if you sign up in the regular window. If you were to sign up early, it's a little less. If you sign up late, it becomes more expensive.
Tem mais uma. A diferença entre o curso presencial e o online.
For FK partners, we have two different ways in which you can do the course. If you're here in São Paulo, you can do the course live with us at our office. That would include all of the classes at one of our classroom locations here in the Villa Olympia office. If you do it purely through online, you're going to get this broadcast format. So I'm talking to you here in one of our studios where we're broadcasting live right now. I'm focused in on, or the camera here is focused in on me as I discuss through the introduction and do the Q&A. There's also another camera in the room that is focused on the whiteboard, which we're going to go to here in a couple of minutes when we do our mini class. And beyond that, you have the slide presentation that we occasionally flash to. So those are really the two formats. Now, in terms of number of hours and how we actually teach the content that we're going to pass through, same. Number of hours for presencial in São Paulo or live online through this broadcast format is the same. In fact, there's actually, for Rio, a benefit, because for the level 1, in addition to giving all of the students the live online, we're going to go and have these intensive weekends in Rio, so they're actually going to get even more hours. But in terms of just normal São Paulo, live or at the office or live online, same number of hours, same teachers, same format that you'll receive in either of the two choices.
Mais uma dúvida. As pessoas conseguem acessar questões das provas anteriores?
The question here about are the CFA Institute questions from old exams made available? The answer to that is generally no. For level 1, no. The CFA Institute does not release old exam questions for level 1, nor for level 2. In level 3, for candidates that are actually signed up for level 3, they do release old exam questions for the written part of the test. I didn't really get into the formats of level 2 or level 3 tonight. Level 1 is a multiple choice test. Level 2 is a multiple choice test. Level 3 actually has a written component. It's got a multiple choice part in the afternoon, but the morning part is written. And they actually do release for level 3 morning sessions the last 3 old exams. So that's it. For levels 1 and 2, they do not release any of the old exam questions. They give you, as a CFA candidate, study material directly from the CFA Institute that includes questions that reflect the style of question that you're actually going to see on the exam. But they're not actual old exam questions. Okay, so you'll have plenty of material to prepare with, and then if you do a course with us, or if you buy material through us, the Kaplan Schweizer material, you're going to get lots and lots and lots of study material, including lots of questions that are very similar to questions that you would see on the exam.
Mais uma. Where the online classes are recorded, and can we watch more than one time?
So a good question here about the live online format. So what I'm doing tonight, this live broadcast, not really a class. We're doing an introductory and Q&A session. We will have a mini class just to give a teaser. But in the normal course, in this format, we do record the live online classes and we make them available to the students throughout the entire semester. So if you missed a class and you were not able to participate live watching at home, you could watch it recorded. Or if you watched live and wanted to rewatch a part of it, you could do the same. So the classes will be available at the day or two after they are actually done live here in the studio in São Paulo. So you'll have access to the recordings of them through the rest of the semester.
Okay.
All right, any other questions before we start our little mini class?
Tem muita diferença do material do CFA para o da Kaplan?
Question about the Kaplan-Schweizer material. The issue, so let me give a little bit of background here. Candidates that sign up for the CFA exam receive the CFA Institute curriculum material. For those that are familiar with this material, it's excellent material. It's got so much in there about every different topic that you can learn so much about financial reporting, corporate finance, etc. The issue with that material is that it's so dense. There are so many pages to read that many students are not able to read it in the semester or so that they're using to prepare for one of these exams. In fact, I have never met anybody that has been able to read the entire curriculum during the semester that is actually working or in school. For that reason, there is a whole industry of test prep companies that write material that summarize the CFA Institute curriculum. Kaplan-Schweizer is the world leader in the CFA prep material. They have these amazing summary books of the curriculum set for the CFA Institute. And the majority of candidates around the world use their material to actually read through the curriculum, do the questions, and prepare for the test. So that's the difference. So they're summarized versions of the big curriculum that a candidate would receive directly from the CFA Institute. Summarized, but still a big task to read even the summarized version. So I don't want you to think it's skimpy or too little. These are summarized books that are still very thick and they are full of information. Okay, very good question. Any others before we shift into our discussion tonight on our little class?
Fala sobre
A prova de amanhã.
Okay, so as a reminder, I mentioned this briefly at the beginning. A lot of you all have signed up tonight for a little event because there's bolsas. There's an opportunity to get a scholarship to do one of our CFA prep courses. And I just want to tell you all what we're doing. We're going to have a mini CFA quiz, little mini test that you can do online at 7:30 p.m. tomorrow night, 7:30 to 8 o'clock. It's a 30-minute test. It has 20 CFA questions. And the winner will receive a full scholarship. Second place, 70%. Giovanni, me fala da percentagens the bolsistas. 100, 70, 50.
100, segundo, 70, terceiro, 50 e o restante 10%.
Oh, wow. Okay. So if you were to take the quiz tomorrow night and win the contest, if you're number one, you had the best score, you get a 100% scholarship to our CFA prep course later, starting in 2019. If you're second place, you get a 70% scholarship. If you're in third place, you get a 50% scholarship. And if you participate, you get 10%. So 7:30 to 8 o'clock tomorrow, you have to do it during that window. We're going to open the quiz. You're going to have a login. You do the quiz online on your computer. Quiz ends sharply at 8 o'clock, 30 minutes, 20 questions. Okay, you can use a calculator, do whatever you need to do. I'm sure you'll do it at home or office or wherever, or the school. But it is live. It's live online, you could say, and you have to do it from that window from 7:30 to 8 o'clock tomorrow night. Okay? All right, everyone. Well, good questions so far with the introductory part. I want to take us now to our little mini class. So with that, I want to talk to you a little bit about a topic that I teach in our CFA program, and that's the financial reporting and analysis material. If you remember from our little introduction, I showed the weightings of the different topic areas on the exam. Financial reporting and analysis for the 2019 edition of the test carries a 15% weighting, which ranks it as the most heavily weighted topic on the level 1 exam, tied with ethics, a very different topic, one that students tend not to love, but very, very important to passing the CFA exam. But we're going to focus on financial reporting and analysis, also known as the accounting material. So I've prepared for you all a little mini discussion, a little mini class that's going to start with the very first of the core financial statements that we discuss in our financial reporting classes, and that's the income statement. So we're going to take a little walk through the income statement here, and I want to take a flash through now to our slide presentation and take a look here at the setup of the income statement. So you can see at the very top, you got your revenue, subtract from that some cost of goods to be able to get down to a gross profit line. Then you've got the SG&A costs there. You can see these are your operating costs to get to an operating profit, or also known as an EBIT, earnings before interest and tax. Other revenue or income could be from earning some interest or dividend income on some excess cash that you've invested. Financing costs, also known as interest expense, would be paid on the debt that you carry on your balance sheet. And then you get down to this kind of funny item called unusual or infrequent items. What do we do with that? How do we deal with it? And what we need to understand, if that ever appeared on an income statement that we're analyzing, is what's in there. What do they have in there, this unusual or infrequent items? So we could be a manufacturing company, let's say, that sells a building, sells a factory, sells a piece of equipment, maybe even that was being used in the factory. And that sale might generate either a gain or a loss compared to the value that we carried that equipment on our balance sheet for. So that gain or loss on the sale of an asset would fall into that category. Now that's one example. We could have other examples as well. We could have issues with maybe having to rework one of our factories because the environmental regulations have changed and we're going to need to put, let's say, an air filter on the factory to be able to make sure that it doesn't pollute the air any longer. That additional cost, kind of an unusual or infrequent item, would fit into that category. So we got to, again, understand what's going on in there. And then the other thing we have to make sure of is that the company that uses that line isn't trying to put operating expenses in it, but instead is truly using it for its intended purpose and only including unusual or infrequent items. That'll bring us down to the bottom of the first slide, which is the earnings before tax. Then you can see this provision for income taxes. So what we're doing here is calculating an expected tax expense based on this pre-tax profit. And from there, we would then we'll take a look at the earnings that we're generating from the continuing operations of the business. And then after that, if the company has any sort of operations that they've discontinued during the year, that could be selling of a business segment or even just the intention to sell it, you're going to put the gain, or excuse me, the income or the loss from that discontinued operation into that final line there before you get down to the very bottom, the net income. So that's a little bit of a walkthrough of the income statement. Now in a class, we would open this up even further and talk a little bit about the different line items within. The very, very first line here, revenue or sales, very important. We want to look at how does a company get to recognize revenue at the top of an income statement? How does the sale actually become an item up there at the top? So just think at a hypothetical, for example. Let's say that you all become CFA students of FK Partners in 2019. And some of you, let's say the ones that don't win the 100% bolsa from performing the best on the test tomorrow night, pay something to FK Partners to take the course. Well, let's say that some of you all paid us in advance before the course began. Well, FK Partners would receive some cash from the customer, but since the course is not yet started, FK Partners is not going to be able to book revenue associated with that payment. They're going to instead have a liability on the other side of their balance sheet. So they'll have cash on the asset side that came in from the customer, and then a liability associated with what we call deferred revenue. Revenue that we cannot yet recognize because we haven't delivered the service. Now, as the course begins, and as the student starts to make his or her way through the different classes, we're going to be able to take some of that revenue, that deferred revenue, I should better say, and recognize it up at the top of the income statement as actual recognizable revenue. And then as we go all the way to the end of the course, and we've completed the entire, all the classes, the last mock test, we take the test, everything's done, we're going to be able to recognize all of the payment as actual revenue on the income statement. So it's very important that when we're thinking about the concept of revenue, it's not a cash basis accounting that we're thinking about here when we study the CFA curriculum. A lot of you that have familiarity with accounting might understand the difference between accrual accounting and cash-based accounting. If we're using, like most companies do, an accrual-based measure, we're only recognizing revenue when the company actually provides the product or the service that was contracted by the customer. Now, if it's a product sale, it's a lot simpler to visualize. So if you were to go into the store and buy a camera from an electronics store, and you pay and you walk out of the store with the camera, well, that's easy. You've given your consideration, the price of the camera, to the vendor, and you've left with the good, the product. The risk and reward of ownership of the product is transferred to you through that sale. You walk out, you go home, start using the product. But if it's a service contract, I gave the simple example of the CFA prep course, but if it's a service contract, things become a little bit more complex. We have to determine how long the service is going to be provided for, and we can basically use an assumption in terms of how much revenue we can recognize based on what percentage of the service that has been provided from the seller to the buyer. So these are just some of the techniques that we're going to explore a little bit more as we dive into the income statement accounting in our CFA prep course. Now, another very, very important concept as you work your way through the income statement would be understanding how to recognize expenses. Now, if you take a look at this slide here, we have two categories of expenses: accrual-based expenses that require us to use what is called the matching principle, and what we call period expenses. A period expense, just to start there, is simpler to conceptualize and to account for. A period-based expense would be a lot of your administrative costs. They don't directly match up with the timing of revenue events. So let's say that we rented a space, an office space for our company, and we signed a contract in which we will pay a monthly rent to the owner of the office building. Independent if we sell lots of goods or services in the month of November, or we don't sell anything, we still have to pay the rent. Thus, we would consider that rent a period cost. Now, the accrual-based expenses that you can see towards the top of the slide would include a number of different other items. Inventory shifting from the balance sheet to the income statement into what's called a cost of goods sold line would be a great example. So let's say that, back to the other example, we're selling cameras. We're at an electronics store, and when the customer comes in and purchases the camera, in addition to recognizing the revenue, the sale price for the camera, we also have a cost on our own balance sheet for that camera. Now, likely, since we're in the business of making profit, we're going to have sold that camera to the customer for a price that's higher than our cost. Now, when we do that, it's going to trigger a movement of that camera from the company's balance sheet, inventory line to be specific, to the income statement into the cost of goods sold line. So you're matching, as you can see, a revenue event with an expense. Now, you can see there's some others up there. I won't go through all of them, but let me just throw another one out there. Warranty expense. I'm using this example of the camera. If you go and buy a nice digital camera at the electronics store, you want the thing to work for the next several years. You don't want it to break over the next couple of months or the next year even. You want it to work for a long time. Likely, when you make that purchase, you're already going to be looking for what we call a guarantee agreement or a warranty associated with the purchase of your product. And for that reason, the seller needs to account for that warranty or guarantee agreement as an expense at the time of sale. So let's say that we sold this nice digital camera to our customer for 500 reais. And we told the customer through a written guarantee agreement that if this thing breaks down sometime over the next 2 years, you have a right to bring it back to me and you'll be able to get it repaired or even replaced if we're not able to repair it. Now, we know that when we sell thousands of cameras throughout the year, not everybody, in fact, most will not see their cameras break down and need to be repaired over the next couple of years. But some will, and for that reason, we're going to already take a percentage of the revenue based on these historical trends and book it as an expense, a warranty expense, at the time of sale. We're already accounting for this based on, you can see, the matching principle of accounting. We don't want the readers of our financial statements to think, I sold a camera for 500, it cost 200, all 300 difference is a profit. Maybe not, because if it breaks down and we have to spend another 100 to repair it sometime over the next year, then that's another expense that was associated with that sale. So we're going to need to understand, again, how to categorize expenses into these expenses that would fit into that matching against revenue events, and others, like those period expenses, like the rent, that don't. So beyond the revenue, as we work our way down to the expenses, we'll eventually reach the very bottom. And this is where we get into the profit, the income. Now, one of the key concepts on the level 1 exam is understanding how to account for earnings on a per share basis. So we're looking at the amount of income or earnings that the company is able to generate in a given period from the perspective of a shareholder, an owner in the business. So not only are we looking at the big picture overall number of net in terms of net income, we want to look at it compared to how many shares of stock the company has outstanding. So we're going to look at that net income relative to those shares in circulation. So if you take a look at the formula up here for this earnings per share calculation, you have the earnings that are available to the common shareholder. So that's a net income slightly adjusted for any preferred shareholders, which is a topic we won't get into tonight, over the number of shares of stock that are outstanding. Now, there are 2 calculations that a CFA level 1 candidate will need to know how to deal with when it comes to earnings per share. You can see that towards the bottom of the slide, a basic earnings per share calculation and what we call a diluted earnings per share calculation. Now, the difference is the basic's pretty simple. It's all the shares in circulation, okay, divided into the earnings number. The diluted one includes all the basic shares that are in circulation plus any potentially dilutive securities. And for our test, you're going to need to understand the concept of these potentially dilutive securities. Now, if you take a look at the list of potentially dilutive securities, you have stock options and stock warrants. These are rights that the holders of these options or warrants have to purchase new shares of stock at a fixed exercise price. If the company issues these options or warrants to employees, let's say, that they want to incentivize to stay with them over the coming years, we need to account for that in the calculation of earnings per share. Reason being, let's say that we issue a bunch of stock options to our key employees, and over time they start exercising these options. These exercised options are going to create new shares of stock. That's going to increase the number of shares in circulation, and it's going to, all else equal, decrease the earnings per share. So we have to go through and test to see if the options, warrants, or some of these convertibles, debt or preferred stock, are actually going to dilute the earnings per share number. Notice that the list is called potentially dilutive securities. It doesn't mean that they actually are dilutive. In the case of a stock option, for those that have familiarity with the subject, a stock option that is in the money is considered dilutive. How could that be? Let's say that we issued earlier in the year 2018 to the key employees stock options with an exercise price of $20 each. And now the stock price is $30. That gives that employee the right to purchase shares from the company at $20 when the actual market price is more. So the company, the shareholder, the option holder has a great deal. The option holder can pay 20 and receive something back that is worth 30, a share of stock. The guy could turn around and sell it in the marketplace tomorrow, or he could hold on to it for the foreseeable future. But he's got an in-the-money option that needs to be accounted for when we're doing this earnings per share calculation. Now, leave that same example. Option issued to the employee at the exercise price of 20 is not in the money. Let's say that the share price fell since that time from 20 down to 15. The guy is not going to pay 20 to receive something back that's worth less than 20. So in the case that the option is out of the money, we're not going to include it at all. That's why, again, at the title of the slide that we looked at earlier, you could see the list of potentially dilutive securities. It doesn't mean that they automatically will dilute the existing shareholders. They could, but they might not. And that's why we have to test each time to determine if we're going to include these potentially dilutive securities in the calculation for earnings per share. So I want to go through with you all one of those calculations here tonight so that you can get an idea of how these actual questions are formulated on the CFA exam. So let's take a look at a stock option question. Now you have a method, which is called the Treasury method for accounting for stock options, that we're going to walk through, which is a 4-step process. But let me flash up here for you all a slide that shows some numbers around the example that we're going to be doing. So I'm going to just read for you all this slide. You have earnings right now of 1,200,000. You have a number of shares outstanding of 500,000 shares. You, in addition to that, have stock options that are outstanding that would potentially increase the number of shares outstanding by 100,000, meaning you already have 500,000 shares outstanding. You could have another 100,000 shares outstanding if all of these people that held those options actually exercised them. That would move the number of shares up from 500 to 600,000. You can see the terms of the option. Exercise price is 15, and what is going on with the market? The market price is 20. So what we want to do now is run through a basic calculation for the earnings per share. So you have, like I said, a calculation for the basic EPS, which would be, I'll write it up here. The earnings number, 1,200,000 over the 500,000 shares outstanding. So this is going to give us a basic earnings per share number of $2.40. Now, as we saw, there are 100,000 options outstanding, and you have an exercise price on the options of $15. In addition, we saw that there's an average market price for the actual shares of stock of $20, meaning that the exercise price for the options is less than the average market price. That means that we have in the money stock options. And for that reason, we can check the box and say, these actually are dilutive. We talked about potentially dilutive securities. Well, these 100,000 options are no longer potentially dilutive. They actually are dilutive. Again, reason, exercise price is less than the average market price. So now we run through a process that we call the Treasury method for accounting for stock options. This is a 4-step process that first involves looking at how many potential new shares are there. And since all 100,000 of these options have the $15 exercise price, all 100,000 are potentially going to roll into the share count. Now, the second step would be to say, all right, now if the employees actually do exercise these stock options, they don't just get shares of stock for free. They actually have to pay something. What do they pay? They pay $15 per share. So we're going to need to calculate now the proceeds that the company would actually receive if those employees exercised their stock options. So we're going to take 100,000 shares multiplied times that $15 exercise price to calculate 1,500,000 in proceeds that employees in aggregate would pay to the company to be able to have the right to receive those shares of stock. Third step, once we calculate the proceeds, we're going to calculate how many shares the company can repurchase with those proceeds. So remember, we don't like dilution. There are 500,000 existing shareholders out there. There's 1,200,000 in earnings. That equates to this basic $2.40 of earnings per share. We don't want to add all 100,000 of these shares to the denominator, because then the number is going to go all the way from $2.40 down to $2 even. So we want to figure out a way to try to minimize the impact to the denominator increase. So we're going to take the shares, the proceeds, I should say, from the exercising of those options, and we're going to repurchase as many shares as possible at the average market price. So we're going to share repurchase here using proceeds. You can see 1,500,000 in proceeds over the average market price. What we can actually go into the market and buy for is going to allow us to repurchase 75,000 shares of the potential 100,000. So instead of having to add 100,000 here, we're going to have to add only the difference between the potential new shares and what we were able to repurchase, which is, by the way, the final step in our Treasury method for accounting for stock options. So we're going to take the first step, the potential new shares, step number one, which is that 100,000, and we're going to subtract from it the shares that we're going to repurchase. Okay, which is the 75,000. Okay, that's step number 3. That's going to give us a net number here of 25,000. So step 4 is calculating, I'll write it over here, the net new shares that will be added to the shares outstanding. Now remember, we already started with an earnings number of 1,200,000 and a basic earnings per share number of 500,000. Basic shares outstanding of 500,000 to get to an earnings per share of $2.40. Now to calculate a diluted earnings per share, I'm going to erase a little bit up here. Diluted earnings per share. Okay, I already have my 500,000 shares outstanding, and now I'm adding to this the net new shares that I calculated through that method I just worked through. That's going to give me a denominator down here of 525,000, and that's going to allow me to calculate a new earnings per share number, diluted now, of $2.29. Remember what it was. It was $2.40. Now it's down a little bit to $2.29. So by doing this work, we're going to work our way to understand a more conservative estimate for the number of shares outstanding. So again, we looked at just purely income over shares. Now we're looking at income over shares plus what would happen if employees actually exercised their in-the-money stock options. So this is giving you a little taste, a little example, everyone, of some of the material that's going to be explored in much more depth in the financial reporting and analysis part of the CFA Level 1 curriculum. Very important concept. So overall, if you remember from, again, our little review of the topic weightings, 15% of your CFA Level 1 exam is going to be comprised of these financial reporting and analysis questions. That means that out of 240 total questions, you're going to get 36 financial reporting questions. All right? Of those 36 questions, you're going to probably have 3 or 4 questions that deal with the concept of the earnings per share, whether it's calculating a number of shares outstanding, a diluted earnings per share based on stock options, maybe a diluted earnings per share based on convertible debt or convertible preferred stock, and then even exploring other topics that we just touched on earlier tonight about revenue and expense recognition. We could add even another couple of questions to the mix in terms of exploring the overall income statement. So income statement, then followed by the balance sheet and then the cash flow. Very, very testable topics here for the financial reporting part of your Level 1 exam. Beyond that, we get into ratio analysis. We dive deeply into inventory accounting, long-lived asset accounting, income taxes, the concept of debt accounting from the perspective of the borrower, and then we get into lease accounting and even pension accounting towards the end of the curriculum for financial reporting Level 1. Lots to explore here. Very, very heavily weighted, relevant topic for the test taker here at the first level. And it's something that we need to, as Level 1 candidates, to take very seriously if we're going to have a chance of passing this test. So why don't I pause now and see if there are any questions from the audience about, first, anything really that we're just discussing here, or any other topics about CFA in general. So I'll leave it all to you now to type into the chat if you have a question about tonight's discussion.
Tem uma pessoa que tem uma dúvida.
Ok.
É o Felipe Carvalho. No final, ele queria saber qual a nota mínima para cada nível da certificação, e tem mínimo por matéria, por turno, ou apenas da prova toda?
Okay, good question about the minimum pass score. If you're able to score 70% or above, you're going to be able to pass the exam. Now, that being said, the CFA Institute does not say that 70% is the pass rate. They want to have flexibility to actually look at how difficult the exam was after they get all of the results in. So the general rule is that if you can score 70% or higher, you're going to be able to pass. But the real pass rate is probably just a little bit lower than that. You could probably get into the high 60s and pass. But there is no hard number, because what they like to do is have flexibility to change it a little bit from one year to the next. So they might determine that the 2018 exam was really hard and the pass rate should be a little bit lower. Or the 2017 exam was about average, so they keep it around 70%. So again, not a number that they publish, but 70% is a good guideline in terms of understanding what you need to be able to pass. And that's the same for all of the levels. Specifically for Level 1, there are 240 questions, as we said. If you were to score exactly 70%, you'll be able to pass. That would also mean, though, that you got 72 questions, 30%, incorrect. So even though, a lot of questions that you have to get correct, 72 questions incorrect, still a pretty good number. So you don't have to do perfect on these tests to be able to pass and move on to the level. So anyway, we don't have an actual number that the CFA provides us here with, but 70% is a good guideline answer there.
Wilson, ele está perguntando sobre as regras de Almner e a ação de tesouraria. Porque no exemplo que você deu, a empresa recomprou as ações, mas em algumas legislações existe um limite. Na prova eles sempre especificam isso?
Okay, first I remembered Felipe already had an earlier question, or a second question that I want to quickly respond to. You don't need to pass any of the topics. It's an overall passing score that is what is relevant. That being said, for the heavily weighted topics, you're going to have to do reasonably well. But if you, let's say, didn't do well on one of the less weighted topics, you could probably still pass the exam overall. So there's no minimum per topic. You have to get a minimum overall. Now, question about the accounting. I'm going to flip to a slide, if you don't mind, so we can take a look at the question that just came in about the Treasury method for accounting for stock options. So I walked through a 4-step process of accounting for stock options. You can see that the first is to check for in-the-money options and see what potential dilution there could be. Then using, in the second step, the proceeds, calculating first the proceeds, and then in the third step, using the proceeds to buy back what we can buy back using those proceeds compared to average price. And then finally, netting the two to get to see what we would actually add to the denominator for net new shares. So that's the Treasury method. That's what we need to know for the test. We don't need to know legislation that could be specific beyond, from country to country or even beyond the scope of this pure 4-step Treasury method. So basically, kind of to summarize here, good question about the specifics of what we just went through in that example, but you don't need to know anything beyond, for stock options, that is, in financial reporting, you don't need to know anything beyond the Treasury method that we just saw. Okay, good. Any other questions?
Esse vídeo ficará gravado para alguma revisão? Sim, nós vamos encaminhar o vídeo para vocês. O vídeo vai ficar gravado, nós vamos encaminhar para todos. E amanhã a gente vai encaminhar o link para vocês realizarem o teste das 7h30 até as 8h. O teste vocês vão ter 30 minutos para fazer o teste.
Okay, good. So, yep, we're recording this. We'll send it around, it sounds like, to everybody. And one more reminder about the test tomorrow night, 7:30 to 8 o'clock. You got to do it in that window. Just make sure that you get yourself logged in a little bit before that 7:30 start time, so you have the full 30 minutes to take the little test tomorrow.
O teste do CFA, as provas são todas em inglês.
CFA test is 100% in English. All topics in English, yes, that's correct.
E o nível de escrita, leitura de inglês?
You need to be able to read in English to get through levels 1 and 2. The tests are in multiple choice format, the actual tests, and our little quiz tomorrow for that matter. In level 3, you have to be able to write, not write essays, but write short bullet points and show work through formulas and whatnot. But levels 1 and 2 are all multiple choice formats, so you need to be pretty advanced in your ability to read English with obviously a pretty complex subject matter. So this is no reading for fun. This is pretty hardcore finance and accounting and economics material. So the English has to be of that level.
Can you explain again about the inventory recognition of expenses?
Sure. Good. So earlier, before we got into this little example of earnings per share, we did a little discussion on expense recognition, and I gave an example of inventory cost flow, meaning that on our balance sheet, we have our inventory. So if we're selling cameras, which was my example, in our factory, we're producing the cameras, and inside of the cost of the camera, you have the actual cost of the parts and the cost to assemble it, the labor, and even the overhead. We have to pay to keep the lights on at the factory. So all of those costs are in the inventory costing and divided over the units, the number of cameras in my example. So every camera would carry a unit value that includes all its costs, the material, the labor, the overhead. And once it's sold, and again, we're going to likely sell it for considerably more than that cost so that we can make a nice profit, we're going to see the value of that inventory item, that one item, flow from the balance sheet to the income statement. And when it flows, it's going to flow specifically into the cost of goods sold line on the income statement. So this is something that we consider a part of the matching principle family of expense recognition. Remember, you had two broad categories: the matching principal ones, and then the period expenses. So this is specifically matched against a revenue event. We wouldn't have this cost of goods sold expense had we not sold the camera. So by having sold that item and generated revenue, we're going to have a corresponding cost of good. That's also going to generate a gross profit, since, again, we're going to sell it for more than our cost.
Alguém tem mais alguma pergunta?
Okay, waiting on just one more question that somebody types into the chat here.
Sobre unusual or infrequent items.
Yes, unusual or infrequent items.
Ele gostaria que falasse um pouco sobre esse tema.
Okay, so as we saw it, and I'm going to flip back a few slides so that we can show it while I'm talking. Unusual or infrequent items down there at the bottom of the income statement. You have your normal revenue and expenses to get to an operating profit. Other income and revenue and financing costs would be interest income and dividend income, and then you get to the interest cost on your debt. And then you have that unusual or infrequent item line. So let's say that we're in the business of selling cameras, but let's say that, for example, we decide to move out of the factory that we're in, that we own and that we're in, into a nice new factory, and we sell the factory, and it generates a gain for us. We're going to book that as an unusual or an infrequent item because we don't normally sell factories. That's not our business. We sell cameras that we make in the factory. So that gain is basically a one-time item. We're not going to see that happen very often. So we're going to put that into a separate category further down on the income statement. They don't always result in gains, though. We could have losses here. Let's say that, for example, we decide that we have too many factories, and we decide that we're going to shut down some of the factories. And that's going to require breaking our lease agreements with some of the owners. And it's also going to require us to fire some employees. And we're going to have all these excess costs associated with shutting down the factories and right-sizing our business, making it smaller. All these unusual costs associated with shutting down and making our footprint, our business smaller, are going to fit into that category of unusual or infrequent. So there's a lot of different things that could go in there. I'll give you yet another example. Let's say that in California recently there were these wildfires, these fires that were that caused extensive damage to a lot of housing and businesses. And let's say that we lost our business. We lost some part of our business based on the fire. Well, some of that might have been insured with an insurance company, but the part that wasn't, we're going to have to suffer for that. We're going to actually have to take a loss on our income statement associated with losing that business or that business property, let's say, through the fire. So that type of unusual or infrequent, again would fall into this category. So there's lots and lots of examples that one could think about, but they've got to be, as the name says, unusual or infrequent. They can't be items that normally occur from day to day, which would be considered normal expenses. And a good analyst has to really dig into that, because companies that are trying to make their numbers maybe look better could actually take normal day-to-day expenses and put them into unusual or infrequent. Their reasoning for doing that might be to try to make their operating profit look better than what it really is. So these are some things that, again, we have to explore. We will explore in our classes, in our studies, but as a good analyst, if you apply this kind of concept outside in the real world, you would need to look at it on a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions tonight?
Can you speak a little bit of the team of questions for tomorrow, and if there is any way to study better tonight and tomorrow?
All right. Yeah, people are looking at how to win the contest, how to get the Bolsa. Fair enough. They're all level 1 questions. They are generated through the Kaplan Schweizer study material for the 2019 level 1 exam. Since there are only 20 questions, we cannot cover every single topic. If you remember, there are all these different topics on the test. So we chose 4 topics: quantitative methods, economics, financial reporting and analysis, and corporate finance. In terms of actually preparing for this, it might be a little bit difficult between now and tomorrow, but if you were really ambitious, you could go to the CFA Institute website and look at the curriculum for the Level 1 exam, specifically the quant, economics, financial reporting, and corporate finance topics. Each of the, out of the 20 questions, each of those 4 topics will see 5 questions on our exam. So there's your tip in terms of how you would prepare. So you could go to the site and see the topics that are elaborated in those 4 sections to see if you, are able to refresh a little bit between now and tomorrow. Okay.
Thanks.
All right.
Pessoal,
Muito obrigada pela participação de vocês. Amanhã nós vamos encaminhar o link para vocês realizarem o teste. Quem está falando aqui é a Giovana. Eu entrei em contato com vocês durante essa semana. E qualquer dúvida, qualquer probleminha que vocês tiverem para fazer o teste, vocês podem me encaminhar um e-mail. A gente está aqui à disposição para ajudar vocês. E é isso. Boa sorte, boa noite a todos e bons estudos.
Thank you, everybody, for your participation tonight. Good luck on the test tomorrow. And we hope to see you next semester in our Level 1 prep course.